Hello again. Good to see you back. I just wanted to start today by thanking you all for the reactions and comments to last week's posting. So thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your contributions, your comments, your thoughts. It's great. Really enjoyed that. And I look forward to hearing your thoughts on what we're going to talk about today, which is the self. If I asked you what is the most important relationship you're ever going to have in your life, I wonder what you would say. I wonder what the first thing that would come into your head would be. For me, it is the relationship that you have with yourself that really, I suppose, defines a lot of the way that people treat you. So the way that you see yourself, the way that you talk to yourself, the way that you treat yourself, that is going to inform the world, if you like, as to how you are going to get treated, how you're going to get spoken to. It's really important to have a strong base relationship with yourself. And that is really the cornerstone of a lot of what I talk about in the book is, it does start with you. And some of that is about self-awareness. So this know thyself idea written on the Temple of Adelphi. So we're going back thousands of years. The great Greek philosophers talk about know thyself. And know thyself is about all bits of self. So it's all of you. And that includes the shadow side. What Carl Jung talked about is the shadow side, which is, frankly, it's the yucky bits that we don't really like about ourselves. It's the bits that we're embarrassed about, the bits that we're shameful of, the bits that we don't really like very much. And Jung's philosophy was basically the fact that you have to embrace all of yourself in order to be a whole person. You have to understand that side of yourself in order to be sort of integrated, if you like, to be whole. So there's two aspects of this, really. There's the understanding of yourself, and then there's the acceptance of yourself. The understanding of yourself is all of those elements, like your strengths, your blind spots, your weaknesses, your shadows. Where do you thrive? Where are you best? How do you react under certain circumstances? What triggers you? Is really understanding your nature, understanding all those aspects of yourself. Where you thrive, where you don't, what's good for you, what you like, what you dislike. All of this stuff is really important to understand those aspects. And on the shadow, one thing I would suggest as an interesting exercise is at some point to actually write out those aspects of yourself that you really would rather sort of brush under the carpet, those aspects of yourself that you don't like. For me, I don't like the fact that I can be very impatient. I can be very judgmental. And those are the things that I really have to be conscious of and work on. So just taking time to kind of understand those aspects of yourself and sort of sit with them. What is interesting about the shadow elements of yourself is the fact that they can sometimes have a bit of a yin and a yang, a bit of a, something that might seem negative can actually have a positive flip side. If you find yourself getting angry, which is totally fine, that anger can be channeled into a very positive energy. Being more understanding of your own foibles can make you far more compassionate to other people's foibles, weaknesses, challenges. If you are more accepting of your own shadows, the bits of you that you're not entirely enamored with, it's going to make you a lot more patient with other people and a lot more sympathetic to other people's weaknesses and foibles. We all have them. The acceptance is really important. So identifying them, understanding, sitting with them, seeing where they could be useful, and then thinking around how you accept those aspects of yourself. I'll give you an example. So I think it runs in the family. My dad had it, my uncles have it, my cousin has it, and it is OCD. There is definitely a part of me which has got the OCD gene. And how does that show up? I will pick things off the carpet. I will pick bits off the carpet. I remember going to a talk in London given by Elizabeth Gilbert, of Eat, Pray, Love fame. Do watch the film if you get the chance. Julia Roberts, very good. Book's fun. She did a talk in London and she was talking about giving ourselves permission to, forgive ourselves for certain aspects of ourselves. Like she went around the auditorium and I grabbed the microphone. I'm like, it's okay for me to pick fucking bits off the carpet, and everyone roared with laughter. But actually, I reflect back on that and I think, yes, I like things to be neat and tidy and shiny and clean, but that part of me, I embrace that. It makes me efficient. I have a run, I run a tidy house. I run an efficient home. I usually get everywhere on time, and seeing that sort of OCD aspect as actually quite a positive thing in a lot of cases, and treating it with compassion, treating it with humour and being gentle with it is absolutely what's the key. And this really brings me on to another big part of knowing thyself and understanding thyself is the inner voice. How do you talk to yourself? I've worked with so many clients over the years who've talked about their inner voice. Some people call it the inner critic, and how damning and devastating it can be, how harsh, how critical. And some of my clients have said to me, actually, I have this inner critic, I just tell it to and I totally get that. If you had a friend who constantly criticised you, told you were crap, told you weren't good enough, chastised you every time you made the slightest mistake, you actually probably would want to tell them off. But just remember that part of you could be the child. That part of you is scared. It's the fearful part of you that wants to keep you small, doesn't want you to put the head above the parapet. It wants to keep you comfortable and in your little box, and if you make a mistake because you've been courageous or you've popped your head above the parapet, the inner critic will have an absolute field day, jumping up and down, dancing around, going, I told you so, told you so, told you you'd f*** up, blah, 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 blah. So again, what I would say is a really good exercise is to take stock of what that inner voice is saying, is to actually start monitoring the language. See what kind of quality it shows up with. Is it harsh? Is it critical? Actually, if it's humorous, that's nice. That can be playful, that can be constructive, it can be more gentle. But if you have a constant voice nagging away at you and it's loud, then we need to change the narrative around that. We need a different script. And that's where, firstly, you being conscious of it, you may not have a voice. You may not have a voice. It may be very quiet and it only pops up certain occasions where you do make a mistake. You do f*** up and it pops up and kind of beats you up. Or you may have a voice that's pretty constant. I mean, it really does vary from person to person. The key thing is be aware of it, be mindful of the language, how does it show up, and then start thinking about, okay, how can you alter the script? How can you change that narrative? How can you give it a hug? Actually, as I say, it's the scared part of you that actually, rather than being told off, actually needs a hug and some reassurance that the adult part of you has got it covered and everything's all right. It's important to understand how you are talking to yourself. As I say, that is going to be fundamental in how other people treat you, how you treat yourself. I just can't stress that enough. This is not a subject for today, but this is why I say so much of this stuff comes from this foundation. If you are out dating, if you're on a dating site, if you're dating people and you clearly, are not mindful of looking after yourself, of treating yourself well, of having boundaries, of being treated well, then that gives other people permission not to. So how you show up, how you view yourself, how you expect to be treated, how you expect to be spoken to, a lot of that is going to come from what's going on inside. And this brings me on to another point, which I want to just make the distinction between self-care and self-love. Okay? The two are really different. So self-care, now don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of self-care, Give me a massage, give me a bubbly bath, give me a nice glass of wine, give me a walk in the woods, give me peace and quiet, all of that. Spa days, bring it on, love it. Self-care, absolutely, but very different from self-love. You can't buy self-love. Self-love doesn't come in a packet. It doesn't come in a potion or a bottle or a cream. No matter how much marketing companies throw at you, this whole you're worth it, you can't buy that stuff. That is the stuff that needs a little bit of work. That's where we get into the territory of your boundaries, accepting yourself, okay, showing compassion to yourself when you screw up, looking after your time, being mindful of, as I say, those boundaries are a big part of self-love. How you treat yourself, how you expect others to treat you. A lot of that is about you setting boundaries so people don't take the piss. So there is a beautiful thing in the Buddhist practice called Maitri, 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 which is about that sort of loving acceptance of oneself, which is really hard, For some reason, it is hard to accept one's flaws and be compassionate to oneself. It's like turn that love inwards. But that's what Maitri is about. If you want to Google it and look up and understand a little bit more about that. This is the work of, self-acceptance when you f*** up, self-love, your boundaries that you have in place. This is the self-love that I talk about. It's not self-care. So I just want you to understand the difference between those two. One thing I do talk about in the book as well is when people say that they're fine, I'm fine, when they're not. So self-love is also about understanding your needs and your wants and communicating those more often. It's big one, particularly for us women, right? We're very good at saying we're fine when actually we're not, or we're fine when we're seething because we don't want to get into that same old argument. You should know what I want. No, partners aren't mind readers. You have to tell them. So there's a huge amount of work that you can do in building a better relationship with yourself, in fostering more of a nurturing, caring type of energy with yourself, and just showing the world that you won't be spoken to that way, you won't be treated like that, that you have some strong boundaries on how you move forward. And sometimes people need reminding about that. So talking to yourself like a friend, treating yourself like someone you love and care for deeply, it's turning that inside, okay? And you can change that dialogue. If you don't like it, you can change it. The key is to be conscious. So when the inner voice starts nagging, you start changing the dialogue. You start changing that narrative to a much softer, less harsh, less critical, a more nurturing, a more self-caring, self-loving attitude around self. So we'll talk more about this in future chats, but just know that so much of what happens with the way you interact with the world, whether it's where you're dating, whether it's in your relationship that you have, whether it's at work, how you consider and view yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you treat yourself is really going to define how the world treats you. So please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, to find me at sassygodmother.com, and stay tuned for more pearls of wisdom next week. Have a good week.